Hey everybody, it's Casey Mitzel, COPE Certified Health Coach, personal trainer, and co-owner of RDFT, Results Driven Fitness. All right, so we are talking resistance training. And the most important adaptation that you have when you do resistance training is you have muscle hypertrophy or lean body mass gain. So most people train because they want to increase their strength or they want to increase their muscle size. Now, I made a living on this in the large health clubs, but I used to walk up to people when they were using one of the machines like the thigh in and out, and I would ask that person, are you trying to get that muscle stronger or you want to make that muscle bigger? And they would look at me just completely shocked because they didn't want to do either. They were doing the butt hip machine because they wanted their hips and butt to be smaller. Now, what we already know about muscle hypertrophy is that that's not going to be the case, especially if the nutrition isn't dialed in. But I know a lot of the people watching this are probably thinking, I don't want to bulk up. And we're not necessarily talking about bulking up. But what we're talking about here is trimming down the body fat while you increase the lean body mass. Now, you should already know that we can't out-exercise a poor nutrition habit. So exercise is not your solution for just fat loss in general. The amount of calories that you can consume at one time versus the amount of calories you can burn at one time and over a course of a week are extremely different. There's a big gap between them. So you're going to continue to eat and not see the type of results that you want to see. So if you have excess calories and additional building blocks in your nutrition, above and beyond maintenance or even creating a deficit that would allow you to tap into your excess calories, then what you have going on is a fat mass either maintenance or increase, while at the same time you have a stimulus that's creating muscle increase or lean body mass increase. Now, what that's going to feel like, and for some of you ladies out there, you might have experienced this before, and even guys, but what happens is the muscle mass grows at a faster rate than you're losing your body fat, and that's going to push the muscle against the skin and fat, which feels tighter, so you automatically assume that you're bulking. And bulking, in most layman's terms, is going to just mean that you're putting on a lot of muscle size or you're starting to look like a bodybuilder or whatever negative association you have with it. But what we're really talking about is the muscle mass pressing against the fat and the skin, creating kind of a larger U but a more firm U because it's tight and it's pushing against that skin. Now, the ways that we would prevent that is obviously making sure that your nutrition is in check and that you're losing body fat at the same time that you're maintaining or slightly increasing lean body mass. Now, when you have a calorie deficit or slightly less calories than what you would need in order to build a large amount of lean body mass, it's really hard for your muscle to actually build without the additional calories and building blocks that you would give it if you were purposely trying to increase weight or increase muscle mass. So a certain amount of muscle mass is always good because the more muscle mass you have, the more calories you burn, even at rest, and that's going to be an important thing. Resistance training ultimately is going to be ineffective unless your nutrition is dialed in, and for a couple of different reasons. Number one is that if you don't have the appropriate amount of fats, carbohydrates, and proteins and the nutrients that your body needs, you're going to have a harder time doing the amount of work that you really need to do in order to accomplish results. So the other reason why your nutrition is extremely important is for recovery. If you don't give your body the right amount of protein, fats, carbohydrates, and nutrients that it needs, then you're going to have an inroad in your recovery, and you're going to continue to break down tissue without rebuilding it, and you're not going to get stronger. In fact, you're going to start to create an environment of fatigue or overtraining. And the problem with that is you're going to start to not look forward to your workouts. You're going to dread the days that you actually do need to come into the gym and work out, and you're going to have more levels of fatigue, and your muscles are just not going to respond the way that you want them to. So nutrition plays a huge factor. All right, so we talked a little bit about muscle fatigue and overtraining, and what we want to get into now is basically how to prevent some of that. So when we talk about concurrent training, then we're talking about two different forms of activity. We're talking about resistance training and endurance. And depending on your main goal, you'll have to take a look at that and see which one you're going to do first. So if your goal is endurance training, cardiovascular, you want to run more distance, that kind of thing, you would do those activities first or on opposite days than your resistance training. If you were to do a bunch of leg presses and squats and then try to do your normal endurance running, you're going to come up against some problems and some issues because of the energy systems that were used during the resistance training are going to be a roadblock for you in your endurance. So same thing goes for resistance training. If your goal is to increase muscle size, strength, or power, or even just toning and firming and getting that muscular look that you're looking for, then you're going to want to do your resistance training first before any of your cardiovascular activity, or do your cardiovascular on opposite days. So very similar to doing cardio first or weights first, we also, when we look at our resistance training program, where we start is from the inside working out. And the reason why is you wouldn't want to train and fatigue the outer extremities of your body that are going to need to hold up the weight for your chest. Your chest, being the heavier mover, is going to be assisted by those smaller muscle groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out by training chest first, and then working our way out to the shoulders and our triceps. And when we work our back first, we're going to work our way out to the deltoids and biceps. Now we can get into spot reduction on another time. That's a topic, one of my favorite topics actually, to defuse and debunk for people. But let's just basically say right now you can't spot reduce. We can't take one spot and decide that we just want the fat mass to go away from there. We can spot train. We can take a specific area and try to increase the size of the deltoid or something like that. That's a possibility. But when we come into resistance training to lose fat, and one of the worst ones that we see is the amount of abdominal exercises that people do trying to lose their belly fat, is really ridiculous. I mean, we talked again about nutrition being the #1 factor in seeing any kind of loss of fat mass. Thinking that you're going to do a smaller muscle group like the abdominals, smaller than your legs or your chest or back, that would be more beneficial to do those movements for increasing calories burned and starting to see a reduction in fat mass. We see a lot of people who just decide to do stomach exercises or abdominal exercises. So very little efficiency there in terms of how many calories you can burn and what the ultimate effect is going to be for fat loss. So again, nutrition, #1, large muscle groups when you're doing resistance training, working your way into the smaller muscle groups. Now, the two ways that you can increase your strength and your power would be by training your core, and that's all 6 deep muscles of your surrounding core musculature, and then also grip strength, because that's going to be a limiting factor when you get into some of your heavier weights.